On December 5th, 1984, the naked body of a 16-year-old girl was found in a wooded area of Lynbrook, Long Island. The victim had been last seen leaving her job at a local roller rink about a month earlier. The medical examiner determined that the cause of death was ligature strangulation, and semen found on her vaginal swab suggested that she had been raped. By March 1985, authorities believed that this rape and murder were connected to similar disappearances, and investigators started focusing on Dennis Halstead, who was believed to have been associated with another young woman who had disappeared. John Restivo had been interviewed as part of this investigation and mentioned that he was acquainted with John Kogut, an occasional employee of his and his brother's moving business. After Kogut was given 3 polygraphs, police asserted that he lied when denying involvement with the disappearance of the 16-year-old victim. He endured 12 hours of aggressive interrogation, and eventually he cracked and signed a confession that was handwritten by one of the detectives, the 6th version of events given by Kogut, containing information all of which was previously known to investigators. According to Kogut's false confession, the victim voluntarily got into Restivo's van, where Kogut and Halstead stripped her and Halstead raped her. Further into this coerced statement, he said that when they arrived at a cemetery, Restivo also raped her, and Kogut strangled her when she regained consciousness and became frantic. With the false confession and a number of hairs found in Restivo's van said to have matched the victims, the 3 men were tried over the course of 1986. John Kogut was tried separately and convicted of rape and murder in March. Dennis Halstead and John Restivo in November. Through the concerted efforts of Centurion Ministries, Pace Law School's Post-Conviction Clinic, Private Counsel, and the Innocence Project, the defense used police department property records to finally locate and test intact vaginal swabs for DNA in 2003, ultimately excluding the 3 men as the perpetrators. John Restivo spoke with us at the Atlanta Innocence Network conference to tell their horrifying story. Together, they spent over half a century in prison for a crime they did not commit. This is Wrongful Conviction with Jason Flom. Hi, I'm Jason Flom, and I'm excited to tell you about a new 12-episode series hosted by famed attorneys Laura Nyrider and Steve Drizzen.
An interrogator's job is to make the suspect feel trapped.
Laura and Steve have devoted their careers to exposing the injustice of false confessions.
We know you were there. I can't lie about the evidence.
He can lie about the evidence, and he's lying about a lie.
Wrongful Conviction, False Confessions with Laura Nyrider and Steve Drizzen, February 19th, wherever you get your podcasts. From Emmy-winning filmmaker Joe Berlinger comes a new season of Wrong Man. The life-changing Starz docuseries examines cases of inmates who have been incarcerated and claimed to have been wrongfully convicted. A group of experts takes us on a riveting, real-time investigation to uncover new evidence, track down key witnesses, and look at possible new suspects. Will it lead to the truth? 3 new cases, 3 claims of innocence, 1 last chance. Wrong Man is available now on Starz and the Starz app. Want to hear a modern solution for a modern-day problem? BetterHelp Online Counseling is there to help you with anything that interferes with your happiness or prevents you from achieving your goals. BetterHelp offers licensed professional counselors who are specialists in issues like depression, stress, anxiety, sleep issues, family conflicts, and so much more. Connect with your professional counselor in a safe and private online environment. And remember, everything you share is confidential, and it's so convenient. You can get help now on your own time at your own pace. You can schedule secure video or phone sessions, plus chat and text with your therapist. And if you're not happy with your counselor, you can request a new one at any time at no additional charge. Best of all, it's a truly affordable option. And for Wrongful Conviction listeners, you get 10% off your first month with the discount code WRONGFUL. So why not get started today? Go to BetterHelp.com/wrongful. Simply fill out a questionnaire to help them assess your needs. Get matched with a counselor you'll love. BetterHelp.com/wrongful. Tell them I sent you. Welcome back to Wrongful Conviction. I'm especially excited today because I've got a guest who I've wanted to have on my podcast from long before I even had a podcast. So ever since I read your story in the New Yorker, John Restivo, I've been sort of in awe of your story, your case, your everything. So I'm really happy you're here.
Yeah, what a long, strange trip it's been.
Yeah, how about it? And like I always say, I'm sorry you're here, but I'm happy you're here. So And with you, Nina Morrison is a return guest on the show today. Nina is the senior staff attorney at the Innocence Project in New York. Welcome back.
Thank you, Jason. It's always so nice to be here.
And this is going to be an amazing experience for me, I think for everyone who's listening as well, mainly because of you, John. So let's get right into it. So, and yours is a New York case, right? Which makes it personal to me as a New Yorker, a lifelong New Yorker. And just by way of background, John was convicted of a rape, murder, along with two other innocent men, and sentenced to 33 and a half years to life. Could well have been executed if not for Governor Mario Cuomo blocking repeatedly the death penalty in New York State. I think that's an important thing to touch on. But let's go back to it. All these crimes we talk about are horrible. This one is particularly terrible, right? This is the rape and murder of a young girl, 16-year-old girl. And obviously, everybody wants to see those crimes solved. But they don't want to see it solved this way. I mean, when we get the wrong people locked up, whoever it is that did this was free to commit other heinous crimes. But take us back to the crime itself, and how did you first hear about it? I mean, you were, at the time, you were in the moving business? What were you doing?
Yeah, I was in the moving business with my brother, right? And when a young lady disappeared, we had seen articles in the newspaper. There was missing persons flyers on different store windows or telephone poles. So people in the community knew that the young lady was missing.
Which town was this?
This was in Lynbrook, New York, in Nassau County, all around, yeah. And there was a couple of articles in the newspaper. So approximately 3 weeks later, a body is found, and it's identified as being her body. And now, instead of it being a missing persons case, it's a homicide.
And this case, it's got so many layers because you have three guys, which makes it really especially tragic, because the other two guys that were convicted of the same crime that you were convicted of were just as innocent as you were, but one of them confessed.
Right.
And we know how that goes as well, but every one of those, even inside of that false confession, there's a lot of nuance to those situations. Do you want to talk about that? Because that was a guy named Kogut, right?
Well, part of the problem with the interrogation process that he was put through is that the police lied to him. And I understand, okay, the police are allowed to lie to you, but he took a lie detector test. And the police told him he failed the lie detector test. And we had experts that actually viewed the poly charts. And our experts said that, he didn't lie, right, that he was telling the truth. But the detectives used that as a tool against him, while this guy is being, he's in a small room with a couple of these, let's call them thugs, because that's what they are. Don't get me wrong, I'm not calling all police thugs. We need the police, and I'm not saying that
John's the son of a police officer.
And that's, yeah. So I'm not calling all police bad, but so they held that over his head saying that, okay, you lied during the polygraph test, which was an actual lie. I mean, they were lying to him, right? And their polygraph expert said, well, I don't really go by the charts. I go by the person's demeanor while I'm giving them the test.
It's an interrogation tool. It's just a tool they're using to interrogate someone. It's not, and polygraphs are not, people can debate whether they have any utility for determining if someone is or is not telling the truth, but police have used them for decades as part of what the experts now call a guilt presumptive interrogation, where they bring somebody in, they've already decided based on these subjective factors like, I get a feeling he's not telling me the truth, or they think they have other evidence the person did it. And once they decide that the person is guilty, the interrogation is not a search for the truth, it's a search for a confession.
In the false confession, right, everything that the police had known, right, every fact that they knew, right, was incorporated into this confession, right? The young lady disappears in early November of 1984. They're interrogating Kogut in early March of 1985. And according to the police, in this false confession, there's facts coming out of color of pocketbook, color of sneakers. I mean, things that no normal person could ever remember. last week, what did you have for breakfast last Monday? I mean, like, every fact that was known, even like the piece of jewelry that they recovered that she had been wearing, right? He supposedly remembers the type of jewelry. And since it was all fictitious to begin with, right? Every fact that they knew was incorporated into the false confession, except one thing. The police didn't know the color blouse or shirt that she was wearing on the night she disappeared, and that's the only thing that wasn't incorporated into this false confession. So according to all of the experts, they consider this a classic false confession because no normal person would be able to actually remember all of these facts. There was just too many facts incorporated into this confession for it to be reliable.
Okay, now we know that Kogut confessed. But how did that lead to your case being brought to where it went and ultimately to you being convicted and almost executed?
The police, they incorporate my name and Dennis's name into the false confession because in a way, the police had us labeled as suspects. I don't believe that. We were labeled as targets. I personally believe that they were going to frame us one way or the other. Right?
Why though?
Dennis. I wouldn't have a clue. After Kogut confessed, falsely confessed, now my family retained a private investigator. We're trying to figure out where I was on the night this young lady disappeared. We figured out where I was through receipts because I had just purchased a house, and that weekend I was sanding the floors. I was in the house the whole night. That evening I was on the phone with my girlfriend who was pregnant. We were putting polyurethane on the floor, so she was pregnant. She couldn't be in the house. She was at her mother's, so we had phone records, we had receipts, so we knew exactly where we were, where I was. Right? And Dennis was with his kids in another town, and Kogut was at a birthday party in another town. We didn't even lay eyes on each other that whole weekend. And beyond that, the three of us were never together in that van as a threesome ever. And we all had independent alibis. And by the time we got to trial, they took my independent alibi witness because the guy that was helping me, he was a friend at the time, he was helping me sand the floors. Right? He was at the house all night. The cops pick him up off the street. They bring him in for 10 or 12 hours, and they tell him that, well, if you don't tell us what we want to hear, right, you're going to end up in jail with them. So they've actually flipped my independent alibi witness from my witness to their witness. And he actually gave damaging testimony against me at trial. And at the civil trial, during his testimony, the judge actually stopped the proceedings, had the jury removed, and told him that you're on the borderline of being charged with perjury here because he had changed his testimony so many times, right? And when he testified at the criminal trial, he lied, right? But they wouldn't give us his original grand jury testimony. So it was always my opinion that his testimony was different from what he testified at the grand jury to what he testified 2 years later at the criminal trial. Because during that time span, the cops put so much pressure on this dude and flipped him.
Yeah, I mean, he was in an impossible situation. It doesn't excuse what he did.
No, you're right. In a way, I felt bad for him because he was stuck in the middle of this, right? And he's under this tremendous amount of pressure by the police. And he's being told, well, if you don't tell us what we want to hear, you're going to end up in jail with him. And he sees innocent people in jail, right? And he sees how easy it was for the police to do that.
Exactly. He knows what they're capable of because he already knows you're innocent and he knows what they're doing to you. So there's no reason to not believe that they would do the same thing.
Correct, right? And then we had the other problem with the police planting evidence in the van, and the judge, because that was a bench trial, so the judge concluded that the hairs that they intimated that were found in my van were never in the van.
Right, and let's talk about that because that is, even by the standards of some of the crazy shit that we see in this line of work, that's going even beyond some of the misconduct.
Yeah.
This is so far, they were literally pulling hairs from the corpse and then taking those hairs and putting them in the van. Like, who does a thing like that?
Yeah. Well, who does it are police who are desperate to solve a crime that has the